Welcome to the Power of Individual Action, a conversation with Christian Cooper. We're so grateful to Chris for being here to share his wisdom and expertise, and we'll bring him forward after a few opening remarks. This event is meant to inspire us all to think about the power we have to make a difference for the things we care about. My name is Nick Bayard. I'm the Executive Director of BirdNote, and I'm thrilled to welcome you to this event. BirdNote is an independent, nonprofit public media organization, and we believe that birds connect us with the joy and wonder of nature. By telling vivid, sound-rich stories about birds and the challenges they face, we aim to inspire listeners to care about the natural world and take steps to protect it. I'm thrilled to share that nearly 300 people have registered and attending this event from nearly every US state and a handful of countries. Please take a moment, say hello in the chat, and share where you're joining us from. If you're a fan of BirdNote, let us know where you listen, whether it's your local radio station or via podcast. This event is being recorded, and closed captioning is available as an option at the bottom of your Zoom screen. We want to make sure this is a kind and welcoming environment for everyone. Bullying, harassment, or spam of any kind will result in us removing you from the event. And with that, I'd like to offer an acknowledgement. BirdNote exists to connect people of all backgrounds, perspectives, and identities to the joy of birds and the comfort and healing that nature can offer. If we're serious about protecting living systems and bringing birds back from the brink of extinction, we must recognize that racism and patriarchy have been wielded by those in power over hundreds of years on this continent to design an unequal world that makes it very challenging for communities to work together for the common good. In particular, we recognize that the legacies of the theft of native land and the theft of Black labor have created massive disparities in health, wealth, and opportunity, which undercuts the effectiveness of every movement for positive change, including mainstream environmentalism, by ensuring that those movements are not representative of all communities. But by acknowledging that the world is unequal on purpose, we can give ourselves a roadmap to work together to make it more equal on purpose. You can read more about BirdNote's commitment to inclusion, diversity, equity, and accessibility at birdnote.org/IDEA. While this is a free event that is meant to inform and inspire, this is also the end-of-year fundraiser for BirdNote. In order to continue providing our shows to radio stations across the country for free, reaching over 5 million listeners every day, and to ensure that our storytelling is informed by science, that it strongly reflects principles of equity and inclusion, and that it remains ad-free, we rely on the generosity of listeners. After our main event, please stay tuned for a message from our board secretary, Junie Wright, about what a gift to BirdNote accomplishes, and please consider contributing to our work. We'll also have a chance to listen to a beautiful BirdNote episode together, written and narrated by Ariana Remmel about trumpeter swans. And now it is my distinct pleasure to introduce a personal hero and unparalleled leader in the worlds of birding and the creative arts. He is the host and a consulting producer for the upcoming National Geographic series, Extraordinary Birder. He served as president of the Harvard Ornithological Club in his college days, and currently is a vice president of New York City Audubon, where he advocates for greater, safer access to green spaces for all, with a focus on outreach to youth and underserved communities. His memoir, Better Living Through Birding, is forthcoming from Random House in early 2023. Without further ado, please share your virtual applause for Christian Cooper.
Hi, everybody.
Hello, Chris. How are you?
I am good. I am good. I just got back in actually from being in the field, so my attire is somewhat casual. I was dressing for comfort, freedom of arm movement, and warmth. But yeah, no, it was a nice outing.
Good. And you're down in sunny California right now, right?
Yes, I am wintering in Southern California at the moment. So I was looking at, I didn't have to bundle up the way I would have to in New York this time of year. But I was looking at Costa's hummingbird and western bluebirds and stuff like that, which was big fun. Phainopepla, which is like a bird I couldn't even pronounce once upon a time. Now it's just, one of the standard palette of birds in this part of the world.
That's great. Well, thank you again for being with us. And our big topic today is the power of individual action. And I know this is a topic you're personally passionate about. So I wanted to start by asking, why is it personally relevant and resonant with you?
It's resonant with me because I get really frustrated when, with all the challenges we're facing in the world, when people sort of take an attitude of, well, yeah, it's horrible and someone should do something about that. And that attitude seems to be all too prevalent. And to me, and maybe it's just because of the family I grew up in, but the answer to that question, that's something that somebody who should do something about that is you, always. And I say always, even when it's the big, seemingly intractable problems that we are facing now, like climate change. The answers, the solutions start with us. They don't end with us. It should not only be up to us. Governments have an absolute responsibility and an absolute duty and huge role to play in addressing these issues. But we can't abdicate our responsibility. And I get really frustrated because I think people have been sort of lured into believing that they have no ability to influence outcomes, that they definitely have a stake, but that they can't alter things themselves with their own actions. And that is the furthest thing from the truth. We always have the ability to do something, and that something can snowball sometimes to create positive change. And that's really what we've got to take on, that mantle, that responsibility, and accept our own power in these situations.
Thanks, Chris. And I wanted to ask you about your upbringing a bit, because I understand you had activist parents, activist family, and I imagine you've been thinking about this as you've written your memoir. You mentioned some important lessons you took from your parents, but are there other lessons about making a difference that you took from your upbringing that you could share?
It's really interesting because my parents never said to me, oh, you have to be an activist, you have to take a role in things. It was just sort of assumed. It was in the sort of the background, the context of our lives, so that it sort of just became incorporated in your DNA. If there was a problem in the world, if there was something you thought was wrong, it was your responsibility to not just run off your mouth, but to get off your butt and to do something to fix it. That's your job as a human being. And that was sort of the ethos in our house. And like I said, no one ever really articulated this. It was just known. It was just a given, for which I'm actually tremendously appreciative.
And where do you think, sorry.
Go ahead. No.
Just wondering where you think your parents might have picked that up.
I think it might have been a part of being civil rights activists during the day. I mean, that had to be a huge part of it. That, the advancement for African Americans in this country didn't come without effort, sustained effort by a lot of people, a lot of ordinary people who, sacrificed and put themselves on the line, and, even seemingly small sacrifices in looking back on things of, okay, I'm not going to take that bus that will take me, that will shorten my commute by an hour because there's a bus boycott on until they let us ride just like everybody else can ride in the front of the bus. And people walked, and people added an hour to their day to make that change happen. And that was ordinary people who did that. And that is the kind of power we have to make change. It's not always going to be easy. It's not always going to work. And as I will say this till I'm blue in the face, it is not only up to us as individuals to do these things, but we have the power to do them. And we should never, ever let anyone let us think that we don't. Because there are people who are and groups and corporations or governments or whoever who are invested in the idea of letting us believe that we don't have that power, so that we don't make the changes that we can make. Let me give you a great example. There's something called energy supply companies, at least in many states. I think at this point, most states in the United States. And here I'm speaking United States specifically, because I know there's also an international audience here. But what that means is that you can select who is going to supply the power, the electricity that comes into your home. It's not just, one uniform grid like it used to be. I live in New York, therefore I have to have Con Edison supply my electricity. No, Con Edison may deliver the electricity, but you get to choose who supplies the electricity. What that means is you can be proactive and you can deliberately select a renewable energy source as your source of power. I did that, must be now 20, 25 years ago, back in New York, and I had to fight tooth and nail. They were like, oh, we don't want to let you do that. I'm like, too bad. You have to let me do that. And what it meant was that my energy in my apartment in New York comes from either solar or wind power or free run hydroelectric, and not from burning fossil fuels. Some people will say, that's not true because all the electricity in the grid, they don't select out the electrons. No, but the money I pay for my power goes to those companies that produce electricity in these renewable ways. And so if enough of us did that, imagine the impact that would have on fossil fuel consumption and climate change in this country. So that's what I mean about individual action. Our individual action, and then collectively our individual actions. And then there's another aspect to it, which is that it can snowball, which is that as we take these actions, we create a culture and almost an ethos around these issues that we care about. And that becomes something that politicians can't ignore anymore. When they know that there are enough people out there who care about these things, then suddenly they're like, oh, I've got to fit that into my calculus in the next vote I take. Because I know there are all those people, switching to ESCOs to get their energy at home. They care about this stuff. So, it has a definite effect beyond just our own individual actions, but start there.
That's great.
I'm sorry, I'm blah, blah, blahing a lot.
No, you're inspiring us. I'm thinking about your work with Star Trek and Marvel as you're talking, because it seems like you've always had the spirit of, I'm just not satisfied with the world as it is. I don't know if folks know this, but you created the first gay Star Trek character, first lesbian character for Marvel. And those storylines, I know, had a lot of impact on folks. It sounds like you've been able to take this attitude to different domains. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Sure. I mean, in some ways it was easy at both. Well, I shouldn't say easy at Marvel. It was consistent in some ways at Marvel. Because if you think about Marvel's flagship character, Spider-Man, his motto burned into that comic book is, with great power comes great responsibility. Well, guess what? We all have power, and that carries responsibility. So to sort of put forth, that kind of ethos in a comic book in a Marvel comic was not hard. It was a little harder back in those days to get them to see sexual orientation as something they should be including in the comics, but they came around eventually, and things moved forward. And with Star Trek, I mean, Star Trek's whole thing has always been about looking forward to a utopian future for humanity. It's just our job here and now to get us there.
And so it seems like you've had, this creative arts side, this love of nature side, and the social justice side. Have those always worked well together for you? Have they ever been in competition with each other? How's that been?
Everything comes in competition with my birding side come spring migration in New York, when everything else gets pushed to the background. I'm like, I don't care about eating, sleeping, friends, family, politics. Nothing matters but the warblers coming back in the spring to Central Park. And that becomes my sole passion. Not just warblers, all the songbirds, all the birds coming back. It's just such a pageant. It's just such a thrill. And I just give myself over to it for about 6 weeks every year. And my friends know not to bother me. I know I'm like, you won't see me until June. Just accept that and deal with it.
Oh, I'm glad we caught you in December.
Right. But for the most part, I guess they cross-pollinate every once in a while. It's not like sort of a constant thing, but I think the place where they cross-pollinated most was when I did a comic book for DC Comics, actually, called It's a Bird. And it was sort of in dialogue or in response to the incident in Central Park. And with that comic book, I was able to take that creative art side, that storytelling side, and merge it with social issues and also with birding. And so that was a real passion project. And I'm really proud of how that turned out. I had fabulous artists working on it. Aletha Martinez drew it, and she did an amazing job. And so that was where it most sort of all came together in one nutshell. But as much as we can use storytelling, I think, to communicate our messages around environmentalism, around social justice, I think they become more powerful because we humans are hardwired for storytelling. It is how we not only know things, but metabolize them. When we absorb things through story rather than just being told something, then it becomes part of our psyche. It becomes part of the way we live going forward. When stories are at their best.
And I want to encourage everybody to check out the comic you mentioned. It's called It's a Bird. Is that right?
Yeah, it's called It's a Bird. It should be available free online. And it's very short. It's I think 8 pages, something like that. So it's a very concise story. And it's a fabulous kind of approach to the whole issue of social justice in a birding context.
It's a beautiful piece of work. It gave me chills when I first saw it. So thank you for putting that out there. I wanted to ask you about your experience serving on the New York City Audubon board as another sort of type of power. And I'm just wondering if you could speak to, imagine we have a lot of folks in the audience who maybe have thought about joining a board, maybe haven't. If you could speak to that experience of positional power on a board, or any other formal role that you've had.
Sure. It's a matter of sort of stepping up in any way that you can. But I guess I have to say, you want to do it selectively because you only have so much attention, only so many resources. So you want to put them where you think it's going to make a difference, and in something that's close to your heart, because it's going to require, a fair amount of time and energy. So you want to make sure it's something you love, you believe in. I don't think I'm telling anybody anything with that they don't already know. But, for me, my hometown, New York City, and the idea of giving back to the city in an environmental way, but also in particular through reaching out to kids, which was how I really got involved in New York City Audubon. That was really important to me. Because this is an example of where you were talking about, does the social justice and does the birding cross-pollinate? And for me, I was keenly aware of the fact that there are or at least back then, there were so few Black birders there, and we remain a very small proportion of the numbers in birding in general. And I'm like, you know what? These kids have to see Black people birding for them to think, oh yeah, this is something I can do. They have to be taken outside because they're living in a sea of concrete and their noses are constantly up against a device, to see what wonders are passing by right outside their window. So that was something I wanted to take on. And by joining the New York City Audubon board, I was able to push that even further along than I had already been doing. So that's what I mean by, pick and choose what best suits your talents, and where your passion is, and where you want to devote your resources.
And so the power to say no also being, I guess, an important part of that.
Yeah, well, I got to learn that power a little bit more, but.
Well, I wonder if we could get down to the nuts and bolts of what you recommend specifically for folks when it comes to taking action on behalf of birds and their habitats. Are there specific things that I know we've got folks that are in urban environments, rural environments, have different levels of accessibility. So just a scattershot question: what are some of the best ways you think folks can take action?
Sure. A good example is in New York City, we have, people think of New York City as, just a sea of concrete. It's actually a city of islands, so we have a tremendous amount of coastline, and on some of that coastline, we have nesting piping plovers, an endangered bird. But with that many people and their pets, there is constant jostling during the breeding season to protect those birds on the beach, to give them a little space for them to do their thing. So a good example of what someone could do to help the birds would be to volunteer for a beach patrol or something like that, or an informational leafletting on the beach to say, hey, glad you're enjoying the beach. Here's a leaflet about the piping plovers who will be nesting until July or August or whatever the date is. They're adorably cute. You want them here, enjoy them, and please make sure your dog is on a leash in the area of the beach, because otherwise these birds are going to be gone. So, that's the kind, and somebody, I'm blanking on Chris's last name now, gosh darn it, but Chris did this in the beaches of New York City. He took it upon himself. He organized a bunch of volunteers to cover the beaches during the piping plover nesting season, and he made a gosh darn difference. And I would normally use more expletive-laden language, but I'm being good here. And this is the kind of thing, one person did that, organized that, and then a bunch of other volunteers joined in and got that done. So that's one thing you can do. I already talked about the energy supply companies to affect climate change. They just passed federal tax incentives here in the United States that make it much more cost effective to install solar, another great way to help with climate change. Thinking really long term, when you see new birders, because there are a lot of us, a lot of new birders since COVID. COVID changed the birding landscape. Mm-hmm. You want to be welcoming to them, even if they look different than you, even if they act different than you. You want to bring everybody in, and it's not just because it's the right thing to do. It is, but you want to do it because the demographics of the country are changing. Mm-hmm. And if we do not bring everybody into birding and make sure everyone feels welcome and safe birding, then there will be no constituency out there in the country in critical places where the birds need protection. People who will go to their representatives and say, hey, yeah, this matters to us. We believe in this. We want these birds protected. And then we won't get the legislation we need to protect the birds. So yes, it's the right thing to do. It's necessary for everyone to feel safe and welcome when they're outdoors in public spaces and out burning. But it is also self-interest for any birder who cares about the birds to make sure that everybody feels welcome and everybody is as involved as possible, because that's the only way the birds are going to have anybody to stand up for them as the years go on.
Amen. So I had a couple of figures I wanted to share, that it's estimated that outdoor cats kill up to 2.4 billion birds a year, and windows kill up to 1 billion birds a year that are not bird safe. So just sheer numbers. You mentioned pets. I just wanted to explicitly encourage cats to stay inside, and windows can be made.
I have this conversation so many times with so many people I know, and they're like, oh yeah, my cat goes out, and I'm like, stop right there. Cats should be indoors at all times. And I'm not looking to foster a fight between the cat people and the bird people. My boyfriend has a pair of cats who are adorable. I love them, but you know what? They stay inside. They don't go outdoors. And it's really, really important, just because they're a non-native predator here in North America, and they will do a number on our birds. Our birds are already facing enough pressures. This is one, again, individual action. This is one we can affect. And I have to stop jumping up and down because my laptop is on my lap and it's gone, blah, blah, blah. But I get excited. I start jumping up and down. But yes, cats. Oh my God, keep the cats indoors. Bird safe glass, that's something New York City Audubon has really sort of led the charge on, which I'm so proud of. We got legislation passed in New York City that new construction must use bird safe glass. And what that's done is it's created such a market for it that now all these new businesses are getting into the bird safe glass industry. More of it is being tested. Prices are coming down, and other places now have bird safe glass available to them as well. So, that's huge. Love that.
That's great. And there are other small things folks can do. We had talked a little bit earlier about offline about buying duck stamps. Duck stamps, I think, are pretty cool. We talked about art too, and the duck stamp is, I think, the longest running government-sponsored art contest in the world, or at least in the U.S. Since 1949. There's been a contest for folks to submit their artwork, bird art, waterfowl in particular, and then every person that goes out and hunts has to buy, now they're $25 a piece, a duck stamp. And you don't have to be a hunter to buy one. 98% of the proceeds go to wetland conservation. So it's a nice way to support the arts, get a collectible piece, and contribute a little bit.
And it's funny because, and I'm fine with duck hunters. Why am I fine with duck hunters? Because they know that you've got to have ducks if you want to be able to go duck hunting. So they believe in the conservation of wetlands so that there are still ducks. Would I rather they look at ducks than shoot ducks? Sure. But, they believe in duck conservation, and that's huge. I'll take my wins where I can get them. Something else you haven't gotten to yet, maybe you're on your way to it, is by putting your listing into eBirds, which I have not done yet for my walk this morning, but I'll do it after I get off this Zoom. By putting your listings into eBird, you give a huge amount of data to the Cornell Lab of Ornithology, which can then use that to crunch numbers and figure out where birds are, when they are, and they've actually used that data. And what made me think of this was when you mentioned the wetlands. They use that data to know when migrating waterfowl and shorebirds were passing through certain areas in the West. And then they worked out a program so that farmers were paid to flood their fields at those times when they knew the migrating birds were coming through, so that they would have pop-up temporary wetlands to help them survive the migration. Brilliant use of big science and pure raw data. Good for the farmers, good for the birds. So, entering eBird data is not just a pastime or a thing for you to keep your list digitally. It also is hugely important scientifically, and potentially can help save the birds.
Huge. And I want to give a shout out to the Cornell Lab of Ornithology. Their Macaulay library is where we get most of our sounds for BirdNote episodes. So they're a big force and just doing great work.
They are it in terms of North American birds. They are and sound. They're incomparable.
Right. So I'm wondering if you've talked about collective action and how we can create a culture of making a difference. Is there anything else that you want to share in terms of, would you like to shift the culture a certain direction on things? We obviously know cats need to be indoors, just culture about people getting outside and enjoying birds. Are there any stones we've left unturned?
I would say more than anything, get out and enjoy it yourself, bring your friends, and people will see you out there with your binoculars or your camera, because that's how a lot of the newbies do it now. I'm old school. I'm still out there with my binoculars, but a lot of people only bird with a camera now. Get out there and do it. People will see you and they'll be like, hey, what's this about? And the more we normalize it, the more people are like, oh yeah, that's the thing people do. Then the more people do it, and the more people will do it. Yeah, it can get a little bit annoying if your favorite patch is suddenly, filled with all these people that never used to be there. It used to be all yours. But you know what? In the long run, it is so much better for the birds and for us. The more of us are engaged and passionate about the birds and what we're doing.
Well, thanks. And we're going to get pretty closely here to the Q&A section, but I wondered if you could tell us what we can expect with your upcoming National Geographic show?
Oh, wow. We go to a whole bunch of different places. I mean, it's 6 episodes. And we go to 6 different places and explore the bird issues and the birds, meaning people issues, that are in each of these places. So I don't want to give too much away, but we have some excitement in Hawaii. And we also go down to Puerto Rico. So it's, and then probably I don't want to give too much away, but then we go to each episode is set in a different place. And, we have some fun with it, and hopefully people will get to see some interesting birds.
That's great. I can't wait, and I hope it's one season of many. I hope everybody checks it out.
And I noticed in the chat someone said planting native plants is important for birds too. I can't second that more enough. In fact, I've become active in a movement called Homegrown National Park, HNP. You can look it up online, and the whole idea is just plant native plants in your backyard, on your terrace, on your fire escape, in a pot, whatever you've got, plant some native plants there. That's hugely beneficial for native insects and for native birds. So, and that's something, just about everybody can do.
Yeah, and I'm personally passionate about trying to change the culture around lawns. I don't know why whenever we decided that this particular species of grass needed to be everywhere at a certain level, and that we would try to eradicate everything else with chemicals and other means. But yeah, the Kill Your Lawn movement is one that I'm personally pretty excited about. Somebody mentioned they have a bee lawn they're planting. This is cool.
Yeah, I'm lucky enough in New York that I have access to a roof garden, and I've got all kinds of wildflowers growing up there. And when the goldenrod blooms in late August, early September, it is covered with bumblebees. It's amazing just to see all the activity. So that's a thrill.
Great. Well, I think we're about time to get to the poll. Before we do that, though, I just want to offer a thanks to you, Chris, and I specifically don't have any questions for you about the incident in Central Park a few years ago, because I know you've talked about it ad nauseum, and people can go and hear you talk about it on any platform. But I wanted to thank you for your courage and your wisdom and your grace, really just on behalf of my family and my community and my organization, for the way you moved through that experience and the way you talked about it, and your courage in terms of teaching folks who needed teaching. A lot of us, all of us, I think, benefited from that. And I just wanted to offer my thanks to you for that.
Oh, well, thanks. That's very sweet. I'm never quite sure what to say when that comes up, but thank you.
Well, thank you. Okay. Well, why don't we move to the poll, which is going to give us 10 ways that you can take action. And the question is, which of the following actions do you think you might take within the next 3 months? So this is to start to get us thinking about what we can do. This is not an all comprehensive list, but click as many as you think you might consider over the next 3 months, and we'll see what we come up with.
And while people are doing that poll, I've seen 2 questions. One is the National Geographic show airing, and what's its name? The name is Extraordinary Birder. And to me, that's not about me, because I've met a lot of the extraordinary birders in doing this show, and they are extraordinary. It's about them, and it's about all of us, because simply by being a birder, you are extraordinary, because you tune into the world in a way that nobody else does. So, but the name of the show is Extraordinary Birder, and it is airing in early 2023. We don't know exactly when yet, but it will be in the first half of 2023.
Exciting stuff. And I think people are still voting here. Give them another minute or so.
I'm going to start answering some of these chat questions. They're good. Uh-oh. And anyone who's asking me about what Canon camera or lens is best, I have no clue. I don't photograph the birds. As I said, I'm old school. I don't use a camera when I go out birding. I'm using a binoculars. For me, it's about the immediacy of the experience, which is not to diss anybody else's way of experiencing it. I know a lot of people really take and get a tremendous pleasure out of taking really great photos. And I certainly enjoy looking at their photos. So, but I just don't have the knowledge on cameras to answer.
Okay, I'm wondering if we have a final results of our poll here. Drum roll, please. Okay, wow. This is great. So the three most popular are the make a point of welcoming new birders, share the birds you see with eBird and other accounts, and reduce your use of plastics and pesticides. Chris, are you able to see the results?
I am, and my first response was keep cats indoors was down to 27%, and I'm like, oh, that's probably because a lot of people don't have cats. But then I go down to sign up with the renewable energy supplier for electricity for your home, and that's down to 21%. And I know you're all getting electricity in your homes. So let's get that number up, people. Let's get it up.
Any other surprises?
I like the number is so high for reducing lawn and planting native plants, just to more than half. So that's pretty good, I think. And you know, none of us is perfect. We all fall short in some aspect or another. The point is not to beat yourself up about where you're falling short, but to do what you can and always try to add more. I know I just recently started not buying plastic water bottles, but water in plastic bottles, or really avoiding it. And it's hard when you're on the road and you pull into a rest stop and you're thirsty. And I go into the store and everything they have, whether it's juice or water, it's all in a plastic bottle. And unless it's in glass or in metal, I just walk right out, walk away, because I'm just not adding to the plastics anymore. Too much of it does not get recycled.
Great. Well, I hope the poll and our conversation has got some juices flowing for folks about what they can do. And this is lifelong work, right, Chris? We're not, the 3-month thing is just sort of an idea to get people thinking about, you know, immediate stuff, but we're in this for the long haul, right?
Yeah, and it's really not that hard. Once you start, you know, you add a little bit of this, you add a little bit of that. I know I used to be a big beef eater, and, you know, I haven't gone vegan. I haven't given up meat, but I've cut way back on my beef. I basically don't buy it anymore. I'll only eat it in restaurants or something like that. Why does that matter for birds? Because they're chopping down huge parts of rainforests to make grazing land for cattle. So that's why it's important for birds. So you know, there's things we can all do and do them. And once you get used to them, once you add them as part of your regular routine, then they become sort of lifelong habits, and it's really not hard.
Great. Got a question from T. Laverty in Ridgefield Park, New Jersey, is wondering how you get a community or individuals involved with birding when those communities have been disconnected from nature for a generation or more.
I think step one is to bring the nature to them. So, for example, one thing we do with New York City Audubon is we took the kids outside, which was great in and of itself, just getting them out into the fresh air. But we had them looking at pigeons. And, well, gosh, you know, most of us, I know I, as a hardcore birder, I'm like, pigeons, my nose goes up in the air. I have no time for them. But you know what? They're the birds that are in their backyard. They are the birds that are outside their window. So you get them started with that. You get them looking at the different color morphs of pigeons. You can talk about how pigeons are not native, but that they're feral, that they were domesticated, they got loose, but now there are all these now wild pigeons who are interbreeding, and yet they haven't gone back to that basic rock pigeon form. They're still coming in all these colors that man bred for them. Why? Why is that? That's tremendously interesting. You get them hooked on all of that, and then you get them to notice the house sparrows, the little brown jobs. And you know what totally opened my eyes as to where we were starting from with these kids is one of the kids said, "Oh, I thought that was a baby pigeon." They don't even get the idea that there are these two different species and that that's as big as that one species is going to get. It would be if like you looked at a mouse and said, "Oh, that's a baby elephant," but they don't grasp that yet. So that was a whole new world that opened up for those kids. So you start with that. You start where they are. You bring the birds to them. You get them to look at what's around them, and then you grow. You build out from there.
Thank you. I've got another question here. Someone says, "I'm not a bird watcher, but I do advocate for environmental justice. What language would you use to draw a connection between social justice and the movement of bird conservation?"
French. I'm kidding. Give me that question again. What language would you use
to draw the connection between social justice and bird conservation?
Gosh, what language would I use to draw the connection? I mean, there's a certain integration to it just from the way our world works, and that, you know, if you look at where they keep citing things like power plants and the asthma rates that result, it's always in neighborhoods with poor people, and that disproportionately means Black and brown people. So there's already a connection there between social justice and environmentalism. But there's even deeper connections, and I realized this when I was down in Alabama. I was nice enough to be invited by Alabama Audubon, and ironically enough, that's where my father's side of the family, even though we're all New Yorkers for like 2 or 3 generations, the Cooper family originally came out of Alabama, and I never been down there. And I realized that movement out of Alabama for my African-American family into New York, into Chicago, was for a better life for the kids. That is exactly the same motivator for why birds migrate. They migrate to exploit resources that are only available seasonally, so that they can raise their young successfully. You know, there are insects in the north in the summer, but not in the winter. So they migrate up to the north to exploit that seasonally available resource. That's why Black people left the South, because there was a resource available in the north and there was less predation, if you want to put it that way. There were less threats in the north. And so we left. So there's a commonality in social justice and in environmentalism on levels sometimes we don't even think about. I don't know if that answers the question, but
I just love what you shared. I think it yeah, definitely does. And we're coming to the end of our program here. I'm just wondering, and I'm sorry we can't get to everybody's questions, but I'm just wondering if there's anything. Getting lots of love here in the chat, Chris. If there's anything else you'd like to leave the audience with.
Like I said, get out there, welcome everybody, and more than anything, enjoy yourself. If you are out there enjoying yourself and birding, you are taking a crucial step towards making sure that will continue for generations to come. And that's all of our job, is to do that.
Well, thank you so much, Chris. It's been a real honor and pleasure to chat with you today, and seeing lots of claps and hearts, and keep them coming, please. And we're gonna now turn it over to BirdNote's board secretary, Chuny Wright, for a closing message.
Okay, can everyone see and hear me? I think so. Okay. So hi, everyone. I'm Chuni Wright, and I have served on the board of directors of BirdNote for the past 2 years. That was such a great conversation. And please, let's all send Chris some virtual applause energy and gratitude for sharing his time and expertise with all of us. So today's conversation was about the power of individual action. And we've seen today that action can take many forms. We are hopeful that you will take one specific action today, and that is to support the amazing work BirdNote is doing with a donation of any amount. If this is your first time learning about BirdNote, BirdNote is an 18-year-old public media nonprofit dedicated to sharing the joy and wonder of birds through audio-rich radio programming and podcasts. We inspire people to pay attention to birds and to take steps to protect them. With an estimated audience of over 5 million people, BirdNote is helping to create a more peaceful and connected world by inviting people into the world of birds and inviting them to find common cause with everyone else who cares about protecting life on this planet. Part of what makes BirdNote special is the fact that it is independent. Our programs broadcast on hundreds of radio stations, but our independence means that we are able to make the best decisions we can to ensure that programming connects to the widest range of listeners and speaks to important issues facing birds and the natural world. Because we are independent, we are not supported by radio fund drives, advertising, or government grants. We are supported by generous individuals like you who value BirdNote enough to offer your support. I personally give to BirdNote on an annual basis because I believe people only work to protect what they love. And BirdNote cultivates a love of birds for millions of people every year. I know others who give to BirdNote on a monthly basis, and that kind of support helps BirdNote tremendously by providing consistent, predictable revenue so that their amazing stories can keep on coming. If you appreciated what you heard today, and if you love the work that BirdNote is doing, please consider donating any amount that is meaningful to you by using the link that is in the chat below. This is our one virtual fundraiser for 2022, and we have a fundraising goal for this event of $200,000. Thanks to 2 very generous donors, we have already raised $50,000 going into this event, so please help us meet our goal of $200,000. Thank you for considering offering your support to this wonderful and unique organization. We will close the event with a recent episode of BirdNote's flagship program that broadcasts on over 250 public radio stations every day. This is the BirdNote Daily episode, Trumpeter Swans Rebound in Arkansas. Thank you for joining us today and for your support.
This is BirdNote. With a voice like that, there's no wondering where trumpeter swans get their name. Weighing over 25 pounds and measuring about 5 feet from beak to tail, these swans are the heaviest flying birds in North America. This flock of trumpeter swans is coming in for a splash landing at Magnus Lake, just outside of Heber Springs in Arkansas. Seeing hundreds of them here, it's hard to believe these birds were nearly hunted to extinction by the turn of the 20th century. This region is part of their comeback story. After a small flock of swans began wintering at Magnus Lake in the 1990s, the Arkansas Audubon Society named the site an important bird area. Now, Arkansas hosts one of the biggest populations of wintering trumpeter swans in the southern U.S. They'll spend their winter here and at nearby ponds, foraging in the shallows in search of aquatic plants. As they lift their black beaks to the surface, sparkling rivulets of water roll off their long, graceful necks. After a long day of dabbling, the flock is ready to roost for the night. Because of their immense size, they need at least 100 yards of watery runway to become airborne. And they're off, taking flight into the winter sunset. For BirdNote, I'm Ariana Rimmel.
Thanks, everyone. I'm Jessica France. I'm BirdNote's Development Director. Just wanted to chime in here real quick before we sign off and just say thank you so much. We're already seeing gifts come in that I hope we don't break the website, but it would be okay if we do today to keep it coming. Just thank you for attending. Thank you for your generous support of BirdNote. It's really inspiring. Chuny said it earlier, but we already had a $50,000 gift to kick off this event. So keep those gifts coming, and just know that all of us at BirdNote really appreciate you. Every day, somebody on the BirdNote team hears some version of, oh my gosh, I love BirdNote. And it really keeps us going, and it really makes a difference when you support that and you keep that love coming and spread the care for birds in your community. So thank you so much. One last time, I invite everybody to come back on and just say goodbye if you want to. And if you don't, we hope you feel inspired to donate right this minute, but just know that we'll accept it anytime, whether it's tonight or tomorrow, or as you're thinking about it over the holidays. We're here and we appreciate you being here too. So thanks again, everybody, and especially thanks to Chris.
Thanks so much.